Today we're going to be talking about an SX Toon Class build. After some good success with my SXX Toon Class build, I'm going to be taking my skills over to the older SX chassis, and we're going to see if we can build an equivalent car that's just as fast. So pretty darn cool. So here, the SSX chassis, this is from the Phantom Blade Black Special. Yeah, and I affectionately call it the Batmobile because it's got like this really cool, sleek car look. And yeah, I'm just calling it the Batmobile. You can call your cars whatever you want to call them. I could have called this the Phantom Mobile or something like that, or Blade Mobile or something. So the Phantom Blade comes with a dark blue chassis, as you see here. And as you notice, this is wider than your typical chassis. So I think that's why it's a lot more stable than other cars out there. So if you take a look at this one, this is an older chassis also. This is the Super FM chassis on the Brocken Gigant. If you take a look at the wheelbase on both of them, you can see that the wheelbase on the SSX car on top is wider than the one that's on the bottom, SFM. Now, most cars have this width of wheels, so you basically need a 60mm shaft in between the wheels on this one, whereas here, you're using a 72mm shaft. Big difference, so a lot more stability, but you're probably not going to reach that top-end speed like some of the other cars, especially around corners. So here, although you're more stable, you're also going a little slower as well around certain things. So that's what you have to kind of contend with. So do you go for stability or do you go for speed? Do you want to go for classic or do you want to go for modern chassis? That kind of thing. So this is a classic chassis. We're going to try to build another classic chassis just like this using SX. So the SX chassis is a little bit different. A lot of things are the same except for the side stay mounting points right here. So if you take a look at the side stays on this, you've got these solid triangle pieces on the left and right side, and you can easily attach modern side stays on this. So here we have these kind of like hollow looking ones here, and they very much resemble what you get with an SFM or CFM chassis. So you see here, these are like hollow triangles on the left and right here, and here we have hollow triangles on the left and right here. So you have to devise imaginative ways of attaching side stays. So here I have two possibilities, and I'm not going to just leave it like this. I'm going to pick one of these depending on what my goals are with the car. So I'm not quite sure if this one will work. This one's jutting straight out like this. I have this feeling that it's probably going to really like not fit this regulation measurement box right here. So I feel that this is probably not a good idea to use this one, but who knows? If I put the weights on the inner hole right here, the top inner hole, or even here, the one that's even further in, that's the third hole down, I might be able to put the weights in there and it might fit. I mean, it might clear. Basically, you just need to have the edges of this. Now imagine this one on this side. You just have to have these edges within the box, and it has to sit in the box, and there has to be a little tiny gap between where the plate is and where the edges of the box are. So that's all you have to do. So I'm not sure it's going to clear. It might clear, it might not, and it'll be very disappointing if it does not. Now if I used this one right here, this hole, the second hole, the outermost hole, it's not going to fit. So, and that's by experience. I've tried this before. But here we have this kind of a thing. So you see here, this plate here is an FRP plate. And where do you get this FRP plate from? You get it from here. The mass stamper set with ball connectors. It has a block weight. So take a look at this. You get this piece right here, an FRP piece right here. And I've attached it just like so with 3 of these lock nuts right here to hold it in place. Now, this is kind of flimsy here. This can actually tilt downward, so it's not like super like attached on here, whereas this one, I've got a little more rigidity right here. It's got 4 lock nuts in this one. So you might say to yourself, oh, well, the 4 lock nuts are going to add additional weight to this. Aluminum lock nuts weigh hardly anything, so it's probably not going to affect the weight that seriously with another lock nut on each side. But the thing is, we would just want to make sure that this actually fits, right? So this is probably not going to fit, but it may. This one's definitely going to fit, but the weights, the mass dampers on the side will be too like too far away from the front wheel. You want to get that side weight. You want to get the side mass damper weights to be as close to the wheel as you can, so that on a jump, on its landing, you have more weight towards the front of the car. If you have it in the middle of the car, it's not quite as good as if you have the weight towards the front of the car just behind the wheel. You want to make sure there's just a little bit of clearance between the wheel and the weight. And so if you have something like this, like a side stay, like this on the old one, where you have the mass damper very close to the wheel but not touching, that's what you ideally want. So yeah, pretty darn cool. So here, I've imitated the rear of it on this. This has got carbon, this has got FRP, and I took these 3 plates here and I sandwiched them together. I've got here an SSX rear stay. I've got here the standard tail plate. I've got here, what is it? I don't know if it's called a Batwing, but I'm calling it a Batwing for now. And you can get this from the Advanced Pack, the Neo VQS Advanced Pack. Pretty darn cool. Sandwich them all together like this. Winning combination. You can put your brakes right here if you want. Of course, put a piece of tape over it first, then the brake, and you can put a piece of tape over it and layer successive sponge and tape pieces on top, so you can get a layered brake, get a different effect that way. And you can put your mass dampers in the rear right here. You can put the mass dampers in the front right here. I've used black, black countersunk screws here, but you can use regular countersunk screws as well. I've attached them from the bottom to the top for more stability in the adherence, in the attachment, that is, of this rear part here. And let's see, oh, I've spaced it a little bit right there, as you see. And on the front is where I'm like a little sad about, because this is nothing more than, what, 2 degrees or something, this front plate. And that's because of the way it's sandwiched on here. As you see here, there is no angle, really, or very little angle. There's not the same angle as you see here, where the front, you can definitely see there's at least a 4-degree angle here. And I was going for 5 because the front slope is about 5. Front slope on this is also about 5. Attached them the same exact way, and this is only giving me like 2 degrees. So I see a little gap there in the front too. The front between where the plate is and where the plate is sitting. So I don't know. I'm using less stuff on this, on the column, on this, than on here. On here I have an extra washer, and it's still at an angle. So here, yeah, it's not as angled as much, and I'll have to try to rectify that. Perhaps using that, they have a kit that has all these red parts in it, and you could angle things a little bit better with that part. It's a wonderful thing. I'll post it right here. You can see what it is, and maybe you can order it for yourself. But yeah, it's great for Tune Class builds where you need a little bit more angle on the front there. So, pretty darn cool. So remember, Tune Class, you're not allowed to shave anything. You're not allowed to fabricate any of your own parts. You have to use existing parts in your build. So, Tune Class, in a way, in a sense, it's a lot more challenging than Open Class, where Open Class, you just allow your creativity to shine. You can build anything and everything and put it on your car, and within reason, of course. And yeah, you can just let your creativity fly, and your car is your own. But with Tune Class, your creativity is limited by the parts that are available to you also. So just because a part is available doesn't mean that it's available to you. You have to go order it from somewhere. You might have to pay $100 for this certain part, and then when you add it to your car, then you find out that it doesn't work the way you wanted. You say to yourself, well, I could have built an Open Class car for that price. Yeah, that's what makes Tune Class especially frustrating, especially for beginners who don't have access to parts. So yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of a thing where the person who has access to the most parts has the greatest ability to create his or her own awesome car, probably better and faster than everybody else's, just because he or she has access to those parts. Whereas Open Class, you can cut and scrape and sand and fabricate your own unique gimmicks on your car, and you just let your creativity shine. That's what Open Class is, and that's why Open Class is so fun. So I have here, remember I showed you that the SX chassis, it comes in 2 colors, right? So these 2 color chassis, they're reinforced, and they come in the same package, red and black, and just the chassis are reinforced. The rest of the parts, right, all of that stuff that hangs off of the chassis, that's all ABS plastic. So you can mix and match parts. However, I've discovered that the red engine mount is unfortunately a little warped, and I can't use it in the same way as the black engine mount. I tried putting a motor into the red engine mount, and it just always has like a little lip, a little angle that the black one does not. So I think that's kind of a serious flaw there. I've seen this in other builds too, where the red plastics are always giving me that little angle right there. So you can't really get the engine flush against the bottom part of the engine mount. So this is what I'm talking about here. This is what I'm babbling about. So here, let me just pop this out. And you can see here, here is the engine mount plastic, and here is the engine. If you flip it around this way, you can see it better. There is no gap between the engine and the engine mount plastic. Whereas the red one, there's like a little gap on this end right here, like it seems to tilt upward for whatever reason. So that's like a fatal flaw, I think, in the way that it was produced, manufactured. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe I have to bend it some to get it to fit, right? So I could like leave it as is and kind of jam it into the car, but then when it gets in the car, then suddenly, you know, the batteries on one side are a little kind of like tough to get in and out. So that's not cool. So that's a fatal flaw, I think, with whatever manufacturing process they have. So let me just put this in. You'll see very easy to change the motors on SX and SSX chassis. So, and FM chassis too. So this uses the same propeller shaft as an FMA chassis. Pretty darn cool. So here we go. We have here, and I used, so when you buy your chassis, they don't come with these metal pieces right here, the battery connectors. So you have to basically find these pieces from some old kit that you don't want or use anymore. So I just took it out of an S2 car, and that worked fine. Yeah. So, but you can't just take this whole, like take the whole engine mount plastic from an S2 chassis, because it's just, there's no covering right here. So when you insert this in, because there's not this part here, this plastic part, then there's going to be a gap right there. So here we go. Put this in, and it's beautiful how it just sits in there flush. And then we just put this piece in. There's two little tabs up there on top. You insert it in place like this, and it doesn't snap in place sometimes. There we go, now it snaps. You have to make sure that you push it in place. If you don't push it in place, your motor will become loose and all heck will happen. So when I was first building this build, I'm going to show you what's inside. A funny thing happened. I was hearing all these rat-a-tat sounds, and it turns out that I think it's the spur gear or the counter gear, it's this yellow gear right here. My yellow gear was defective and was making all these rattling noises. So there's the yellow gear underneath the light blue gear. The light blue gear is your speed gear. It is 3.5 to 1 gear ratio. And the yellow one, the counter gear, I think it's, or spur gear, it is the complement to the light blue. And yeah, that was for some odd reason defective. Maybe it was worn and it was creating all these rattling noises. And so as soon as I replaced that yellow gear, then it was smooth and pretty cool. And so here I'm using orange gears right here. And yeah, you can use pink gears as well. Everything was good except for that yellow gear. Yes. So my light blue speed gear has a bearing inside it. Yes, so I think it's a 620 bearing, and yeah, lubricated with a spacer, and yes, it does make a difference. It gives you 1 kilometer, possibly more, speed difference, but 1 kilometer per hour speed difference can mean the world in a race. So try to use that if you can. Try to use a fluorine-coated gear shaft if you can. Make sure it's lubricated, even though it says that it's not no lubrication necessary. You still need some lubrication in there. So use the oil pen for that. Use Ganapati oil or whatever favorite oil you need for your bearings. Yeah, what else? There's also, yeah, my new blend of oil, which is voodoo-based. I'm calling it Tara oil, and it's a special blend. It will make your motors faster by up to 2 kilometers per hour faster. Pretty cool. Yeah, so yeah, I found a secret combination that will make your motors faster. Now remember, speed will not always win races, right? If you have a motor that's way too fast, you might course out. So really it's all about speed and stability combined. So try not to be so dedicated to making your cars super fast. Because if you want to see a speed demon, I mean, there's there's nothing else to say but to see this car, right? This is a Speed Demon, Tune class build, Speed Demon. And even Shellshock made a comment about this car right here.
This red one's still not in? It's the fastest one.
4, final lap.
This is the one that's really fast.
So yeah, speed does not always win races. You need stability too. You would need to make sure that all of your parts are securely bolted on the car, and you also need to make sure that your brake settings are true, right? So by true, I mean make sure that whatever tape you place over the brake, or if you don't have tape, make sure that your brake settings are perfect. If they're not, and some things are loose, then you're probably going to course out, unfortunately. And yeah, unfortunately, that's what happened with this car in this month's AAA Hobbies race. This car had the unfortunate issues of brakes not being perfect. The tape got kind of squished again. I should have replaced the tape. And also this left roller mount was loose, just like what happened with Hellboy. Yes, sometimes you need a little more time to fix issues like that. So yeah, unfortunately. And sometimes all you need to do to check to see if your rollers are okay is to just place your finger on top of them and just see if they move, right? If they move too much, if they're not like stable on here, then you know you've got a problem, right? Now, you can check this to your heart's content. You can look, you can hear the spinning. In fact, yeah, you can hear the spinning. I'll put this over the microphone. And it's a glorious sound. When it spins, it hums, right? So you could check those to your heart's content, but if this is not rock solid stable, then your car is going to course out, most likely. So yeah, sometimes it won't. And you know what? These things here, if these are not stable also, sometimes you can course out, especially after a jump. But really, you want to make sure that everything, rollers, damper weights, everything, the plates, make sure everything is screwed in properly. Check your car between every race. That cannot be emphasized enough. I've made the mistake of not checking my car after every race, and yeah, that's the real reason why you could lose, right? So if your car is like really fast and you know that it stayed on the track in practice and against other cars in practice, against other cars in an actual race, aside from vibration control, the main culprit of anyone losing a race is coursing out. And coursing out means that something was not stable enough on the car. So you have to make sure that you bolt down everything. You have to check every component of your car after you've raced it so you can prepare it for the next heat. So if you don't do this, you're taking a gamble, right? It's not even 50-50. It might be like 0 to 100, right? 0 chance that you'll be able to do well in the next heat. So you have to check every single part of the car. And that requires a critical eye. It requires you to check your ego, right? Take your ego, put it aside, and say to yourself, let me check every single aspect of this car and see what I can do to make sure that it is rock solid stable. And also, one big point, make sure you clean your tires. You don't have to do it after every race, but try to do it after every 2 or 3 times you race, because your tires can accumulate dust, dirt from the track. So if you don't clean your tires, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, because every time you have, say, regular tires and you accumulate junk on them, they will, just think of them as going up to the next class, right, of tires. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So if you don't clean your low fricks tires, it's not going to be a good situation. If you don't clean your super hard tires, they're going to basically turn into low fricks tires. If you don't clean your hard tires, they're going to turn super hard, and don't clean your regular slick tires, they'll turn hard. So that's not always a good thing, depending on what you want to do with your car on that particular track. So make sure that if you've tested your car in practice using clean wheels, your racing trials with your car, you should have the same parameters in your car. You should make sure that you clean the wheels so that what you have in an actual racing event will be what happened in practice. So cleaning the wheels, bolting down everything, very, very important. So let's take a closer look at what we have here. So we're going to take a more in-depth look at everything. So check it out right here. If I'm going to use this side stay right here, I'm going to bolt it down something like this, where I have this, as you see here, the bottom hole. There's two holes that you could attach to. I attached it to the bottom hole, to the second hole of this mass damper plate right here. And then I attached lock nuts and screws to here as well. So that on the side, it's pretty stable, but it still can come out, right? It's going to be resistant to come out. And you can't rock it left and right. That's the important thing. You don't want this to push in or out when this car is on the track. This has to remain solid like this. So that's why I've got the two lock nuts, just like this, bolting this in place so that it doesn't swing back and forth. So whenever you have a setup like this triangular hollow triangle right here, you need to bolt the plate in between this hollow triangle bar. So you need to basically place the two lock nuts like so you can bolt it in place so it doesn't swing by side to side. That's what I've done here. So with this I needed 3 just because of the way it was. So initially I had these two here, the ones that are surrounding the hollow part, and it was not sliding back and forth, and that was good. But I also needed something here so that this wouldn't tilt down as much. So this one's bolted down a lot better because it's got that third screw right there, the one on the inside. So that's pretty cool. But I don't know if this will work, this one. I can try it. I think this one might be more advantageous to use than this one, because this one brings the mass damper weight closer to the wheel. So yeah, I'm going to check to see which one is better for me. Hopefully this one will fit inside the measurement box, and yeah, I'll just make my decision that way. I'll try this one first because I kind of want the weights to be closer to the wheel. So I used a regular propeller shaft for FMA cars in this, but at some point I'm going to upgrade to the FMA hollow shaft for this. This is the 2.0 millimeter propeller shaft. So take a look at that. It's the hollow shaft. It's got the blue pinion ends on it. Very cool. That's what you need for something like this. You want a lightweight shaft that has the different kind of pinion. It doesn't have like a square-like pinion. It has a taper on the inside part, so it spins more freely on the inside part. So yeah, that's what you need to do. So in open class, you can simply take an FMA standard 2.0 millimeter shaft and just nip off the ends of the pinion at an angle, and then you can simulate that same effect. In fact, I think a regular propeller shaft that's nipped in that fashion is actually stronger than a hollow shaft that has the blue ends on it. So I think some people opt to basically take those pinions, the squared pinions on a standard shaft, nip them at an angle, and then attach them to a hollow propeller shaft. I think that is the best combination, but I haven't experimented enough with that. So yeah, that'll be revisited in the future. So here in my car is a torque-tuned motor, and it's been broken in. And so it gives me, this car right now gives me 26 kilometers per hour, which seems very slow. But remember, this is an SSX chassis here, and torque-tuned cars can be a lot faster, and this will get faster. I just need to race it more. It's a brand new motor that I broke in, and so it'll get faster as I successfully race it. In fact, other cars that I have torque-tuned motor in, they're not that fast in the high-end speed, but they're really fast on the track. So yeah, this one here, it's only 27 kilometers per hour, but you can tell when you're seeing it run, you can tell that it's faster than a lot of people's cars because of the way it was broken in, because it's an SSX chassis, because it has all the parts in combination together that allow it to run as fast as it does. So pretty darn cool. So remember, top end speed, it's not the whole picture. Sometimes stability, cornering ability, things like that are very, very important. And if you have a car that's running like it's on rails, flat on the track, you're going to get some really good speeds overall on the track. So remember that I had raced this on a time trials track, and it was beating open class cars with its speed. And it's just a tune class car. And so, in many ways, a tune class car can be superior to an open class car if designed properly. So, next steps on this, I'm going to add a body shell to it. So I've discovered, yes, I could easily attach this onto here and, yeah, make another Batmobile. But I've also discovered that this particular AR body will fit on here, the Aero Avanti. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. So if I spray painted an Aero Avanti body shell to be red, I think that'll be very cool. I can also leave it like this too if I wanted a red, white, and blue, black kind of effect. Yeah. So I wish they had made these with red, right? With red print. That would be perfect. I don't think there is such an animal, right? There's no such plate like that. So that would be cool if this were, in keeping with the red and black aspect, I'm going to try to make everything red or black. So yeah, very similar to this car, except I have like yellow tires on the back, so that's why I've got gold. That's why I've got these gold dampers, mass dampers on here. So pretty cool. So what else? Oh, yes. Because I used long screws here, I attached these rubber pipes on here. So I'm basically preparing this car for its eventual death to become an open class car. So yes, when your box stock car gets damaged, the front mount gets damaged, for example, you turn it into a tuned or open class car. When your tuned class car gets damaged, turn it into an open class car. So when this eventually gets like so damaged that I don't know what to do with it, I'm just going to turn it into an open class car and add like one of those tail dampers on there made with car catcher material. Pretty cool. So yeah, very, very cool. And you see the difference here. I added some Low-Frix tires on the front and super hards in the back, whereas here I've got super hards on the front and back, and here I've got carbon wheels on here for more rigidity, more stability in the wheels. And that really makes a difference, these carbon wheels. When I try to press these wheels together onto the shaft, it feels a lot more firm, like it is definitely bolted on there. Whereas with these steel shafts that I used here, these wheels have been known to slide off at inopportune times, and that was one of the reasons why I lost in one of the heats on this, because the wheel was not securely attached. Even though it really was, it was its time to basically slide off the shaft, sadly. And you'll find that over time, as you race your cars more and more, you'll find little things like certain things are not bolted on properly as well as you had wanted them to be. Wheels from shafts especially, so you have to do that little trick where you have to nick the end of the shaft using pliers and just add more friction to the end of the shaft. So when you apply the wheel onto the shaft, it'll be a tighter fit. So yes, so here carbon wheels, they already have a tighter fit, and that's really cool. So the chances of these wheels coming right off the axle, much less with carbon wheels. Very cool. And a lot of people like these dish-style wheels right here. They feel that they're actually superior to any of the other wheels out there. So that's cool. I don't think style-wise they're the best. I think they kind of look kind of cartoony, but that's just me. I always like these kinds of 5-spoke wheels a lot better. They look more like racing car tires to me. So yeah, for me, there's a lot to do with style, right? So that's why, like here, I've got everything like color coordinated, so I like the style of this car, and so this is appealing to me. Even if it doesn't win, it's fun to race something like this just for grins, right? It's fun to race a car that you really enjoy looking at. Whereas if I were to be more serious about racing, then I would basically race a car like this, right? So this is cool looking, but I will say that I like it. I just wish that the front wheels were different, and I could replace the wheels with something else, but I think this is the best thing that I could do for it in this case, is to have these ugly wheels in the front. Some people like these wheels, but I think they're ugly, and yeah, it makes it look like an old style car with with the front shiny wheels like that. But some people like that, so to each their own. So yeah, very cool. So I think I'm not going to have the same problem as I experienced with my SFM car, but maybe I will. So such that I need to basically tape the whole thing like this so that I can keep this whole thing in one line right here. If I didn't have the tape, then the weight of the side stays would kind of like tilt this down. These mass dampers are heavy, so these would be tilted down towards the ground, and I wouldn't be able to clear the 1mm clearance. So the tape enables me to make that 1mm clearance underneath. Very cool. So yeah, I am going to continue building this very sleek SX Racer. It might end up being something that's not so fast, but we'll see. It might be faster. Who knows? So using FRP plates this time, I think things will be a little lighter in the back. It'll also be a little more bendy, so a little more flexy, which is always a good thing in certain cases. Sometimes having a stiff rear is not always the way to go. So yeah, having some flex is a good thing. And I think a lot of racers out there know about the properties of FRP versus carbon. Carbon's great if you want that stiff, static stability. But if you want a little bit of flex, then you have to use FRP plates. And FRP plates are cheap, right, compared to carbon, but there's a purpose for each of them. And so you have to pick the right one for the track that you were racing on. Very, very cool. So yes, everybody, if you like this video, please slam the like button, subscribe to my channel. You'll see more videos just like this one. Until next time, everybody, see you. Bye.